Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our new kind of free-forming conversation with my dear friend and fellow improviser, William.
Hello, everyone.
And we are not really clear what the hell we're talking about, but uh, that's the story of my life. And, one of the nicest things that William said to me, and he always says a lot of nice things to me, was that, Hamid, you're the most unpredictable person I know. I was very complimented by that. I think a lot of people would not be. I think they would be offended. I was very complimented because it's really me. I mean, it's like I don't I can't predict myself. I have no idea what I'm gonna do tomorrow or even in the next 2 hours. So William hit it right in the right place when he said that about me. So William, Uh, as I said, I have no idea what we're going to talk about. So why don't you just say some stuff and we'll go from.
Yeah, just talk. We'll figure it out as we go. No problem. Well, you brought up the subject of you, so I thought that might be a good place to start.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I've always kind of marveled at who you were and who you are in my life, like who you were when I first met you and who you are now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you're definitely nothing like anybody else that I've ever known in my life, in my circle. You're not a predictable person.
Yeah.
You will say a lot of different things, and sometimes it amazes me. Sometimes I wonder about your sanity. And
Right.
then I say, well, that's just a judgment, so it doesn't matter, so I'll just let that go.
Yeah.
And at other times, like for example, when we do our improv and we do improv together once a week at least,
Yeah.
it's kind of fun. I can see you do it and you love it, and I know that. But I can see sort of I won't say an agenda, but I can feel and hear the wheels going with you. It's like you can take stories and create stories. I think certainly much more comfortably than I can. My expertise is more fooling around with voices and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But that's one thing I can say is I can see you I can see you building stories in your mind and then bringing it forward. So that's one thing I can share with our experience together
I mean,
most
honestly,
recently.
I don't really do that. I like in improv, I'm like, you see me build stories, but I'm not really building story. I'm like, okay, what happens next? I have no idea. Let's just make something up. It's not like I have any kind of idea what the hell I'm doing. And I guess maybe that's the $64,000 trick that I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, but some people think I do. It's like,
Well, I will say the one thing that has really led me to feel that way is sometimes that your comments afterwards about the experience sometimes you say you like to challenge some of the people in the group, maybe all of the
yeah,
people in the group,
yeah.
by being and portraying characters that um I don't know how to put this in a politically correct
Make
way,
them
but
uncomfortable.
yeah, exactly.
You don't need to we don't need to talk about nitty gritty. It's just that, I like to push buttons. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my thing. I mean, I would not argue with you that I like to push buttons. And you having known me and I have pushed your button plenty. And the thing is that, you know, both of us are Canadian. I am conveniently Canadian. You are very Canadian. You're one of the most Canadian people I know because for the people who don't know, Canadianness is actually an adjective. You know, I mean, I wouldn't even say Americanness is so much an adjective as Canadianness is, because, America is like 300 million people or 350, and they're very different in many different aspects. But Canadianness, you know, and you are very Canadian. And because of that, I have challenged you a lot. I have pushed your buttons a lot because you're so Canadian. If you were less Canadian, it would be easier or harder to push your button.
Kind of funny you say that, because I wanted to say, and you might laugh at this, I wanted to say I'm unapologetically Canadian.
Yeah.
And yet, what are Canadians most known for?
Right. No, I know that's a good one. That's a good ponder right there. Ponder. Let's ponder that ponder. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is that I know for a fact that I'm living in a game show and in a game. I have never taken this reality or this matrix seriously. Like right now, if there are a three-headed goat shows up next to you and starts yodeling to your left side and that side, I wouldn't be surprised. My answer would be, what took you so long?
You see, everyone, you see, this is why sometimes I think maybe he's not sane, but
right. That's the essence of it. Like I am anytime I see things that people think actually this world makes sense, to me that is insane. Nothing makes sense. How does that make you feel when I drop something like that on you? Nothing makes sense.
Well, actually, you know what? It reminded me of a roommate of mine that I had for a short while. A fascinating person. She grew up, she's also, well, not a native Canadian, but she spent most of her years here and still lives in Canada now. And she lived on the Vancouver Island, far west coast of BC, and in a little community. And she was big into gardening, herbs, natural things, green things, that kind of thing. She was big into fermenting and all that kind of stuff. And she had an amazing ability and knowledge around all of that, to the point of being able to actually help people on a physical plane heal themselves of many of their ailments, or certainly improve, if not completely, alleviate someone's physical problems. And we're talking the big C, for example, is one thing, like cancer, for example. And that one thing she would always say to me when we lived together for a short time, in a non-romantic type of situation, just roommate kind of thing, she would say, everything in North America is backwards. Everything, like from, don't consume salt, where she thinks that, consuming salt is a very good thing. Just the type of salt, of course, is different. And there are lots of other examples like that. I don't need to go into the granularness of that. But the key thing was that she said everything was opposite. She had just come from being in Nepal for about 2 years after the death of her son. She had to just leave this country and kind of get away and reground herself. And Nepal seemed to be the place to do it. And when she came back, she could compare how they lived in Nepal and how she got used to lifestyle there. And then she came here and it was very different. And you get to see a country you lived in for so long in a whole new perspective. So it was interesting that she said that. And so I correlate what you said to what she said, and I can relate.
So, brother, when you were talking, there's an iconic image that exists in my mind's eye that I would never forget it. And it's the most precise and distinct and concise explanation of this reality.
It's not three-headed goats yodeling, is it?
No.
Oh, good. I didn't like that one too much.
Why did they create the matrix, Morpheus? Because they wanted you to turn you into this. Holding a battery, Morpheus says. William, if you know the depth of that, on how many levels that makes sense? That requires 100 million hours of conversation.
Wow.
What do you think? If we are here to be turned into batteries, how many ways can that be interpreted and extrapolated?
Well, I don't know about how many different ways, but one thing that did come to my mind was the term bipolar, because I thought of North Pole, South Pole, positive, negative. And bipolar is also considered in many ways a health condition, a mental health condition, and an unhealthy one at that, where you're playing at the two extremes. So it's just interesting that you say that, and the first thing I think about is bipolar, and that bipolar is not necessarily considered healthy, mentally healthy. So so I think that was the strongest image I got just from what you shared about the first thing that popped into my mind.
Perfect. So I'm going to give you little by little, and I want you to flesh it out, because to me, that's an interesting insight that you had right there. But let's say, have you heard the concept of busy work, William?
Well, I've heard the term. Whether our definitions match, I'm not sure.
What is your definition of busy work?
Just doing. Being a human, instead of being a human being, you're being a human doing. You're always.
Do you know
doing.
what busy? Do you know what busy work is?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's my most honest answer.
So busy work, as far as I heard, is that there are 3 boxes there on the corner of warehouse, and they are on the left side of the warehouse. I ask you to those 3 boxes from the left side of the warehouse to the right side of the warehouse. And then they are on the right side of the warehouse. I ask you to move them from the right side of the warehouse to the left side of the warehouse. Ad nauseam, forever.
Mm-hmm. That's busy work.
Yes.
That's just doing something for the sake of doing something, but it has no real meaning or benefit.
Actually, let's take a step back. Doing something for the sake of what?
For the sake of just doing it, I would say.
I want you to go deeper. Doing something for the sake of?
Next thought comes to mind is doing it for someone else, or based on what someone
told.
There you
go. There you go. You're getting there. You're getting there. Go deeper. Doing something for the sake of?
People pleasing is the next one that comes to mind.
That's great. These are things that I haven't even thought about, but keep going.
Yep. People pleasing, listening to authority. I was told to do that by someone, so I just went and did it.
Keep going.
I don't know if is there something deeper that is there. I don't know.
Okay, so I'm gonna paint a little bit of a picture for you.
Sure.
You're living in a prison, and your energy is being farmed and stolen, and you're a battery, right? That's the story. And you are engaged in busy work. What does that do?
The only thing I see it doing is using my energy, especially when you say I'm a battery. So I'm using my energy for really no specific purpose or benefit.
Bingo. That's the definition of busy work. And guess what? Look around this planet, William. I would say probably 95% of what we do is busy work. Why do we do busy work? Why do they want us to do busy work?
Well, I've heard the expression so that we cannot really discover who we truly really are.
Right. Because if you're engaged 24 hours moving boxes from another one side to the other, then that's your definition of your life. How the hell are you going to actually figure out yourself? Who are you? What are you? What the hell are you doing? Why are you in this warehouse? You have no time for that. All you're doing is moving boxes.
Well, that ties into something even bigger and deeper for me, and that is the old expression, well, a guy's got to survive, a guy's got to make a living, a guy's
Right.
got to earn money, a guy's got to pay his bills,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And that is a dilemma I hear a lot. You know,
Right.
like I'm a follower of a guy named Kyle Cease, and a lot
Right.
of the people that call in and talk to him,
Yes.
that's their biggest dilemma is,
Yes.
but I've got to earn a living. I've got to make money. I
Yes.
can't just follow my dreams. I
Yes.
can't just follow my heart.
Yes. Brilliant. So I don't know. I mean, I have probably spammed you with this 1 million times, but hopefully you have watched Sense8. Have you watched Sense8 or not?
Sensei?
Sense8, the series Sense8. Maybe I haven't spammed you enough.
No, you may have mentioned it once or twice, but I have not seen
Yeah, Sense8 is the most important series created by Wachowski siblings. And William, I give you a simple picture. Life is about taking risks that most of the time you have no idea how they're going to turn out. Okay? And you know I am crazy, and that's, a compliment to me that I am crazy. I would tell you that I am, what do you call it? I am constantly picking a lock in the dead of the night when I have no idea what's going to be the result. That's the story of my life. Our mutual friend Jenny laughs at my actions and my decisions. She's like, you just do the craziest things and you have no idea. And I'm like, that's the way I live. So the people who are so concerned about their survival, they are straddling a fence. They don't jump into this side or that side. They just straddle the fence until they get impaled on it. And 30 years later, die from survival, William. Give me a good death tomorrow, but for the love of God, don't let me die from survival. Because those people who are engaged in those little boxes, that's all they're doing. And one day they will die from their survival.
Kind of a sad picture, but I certainly couldn't argue that. Well, when you said that, I just imagined people sitting on the fence so long that the pole ended up stuck up their butt. So,
that's what I
it's
said,
like
impaled. That's what I used, the
impaled.
perfect English word for you, impaled. They get impaled on that.
You didn't say
fence.
where the entry point was, but I guess we left that to our imagination.
Well, that
okay,
usually impaled, I guess in my mind is always one end that it goes in. So
I'm thinking like, in a sword fighting movie, you'd be impaled by the sword in any part of your body, for example.
So you kind of, and that's, what is it? You sanitize the thoughts. So that's just one tiny bit of the matrix for you. The idea of busy work. Right? Imagine, if you will, that this whole matrix thing is basically BS, made up BS, run by BS, complete lies. So what I'm telling you, or what your ex-roommate used to, non-romantic roommate that you had to clearly establish, told you that, like everything we do is here ass backwards. And the thing is that one of the funny things about this reality, William, is that people who are, have a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance and have Stockholm syndrome, they go, they basically turn themselves into a pretzel, or they do several flips to make sense of something which is absolute BS. You understand what I'm saying?
Now, I'm going to interrupt for a second, only for clarification. I've heard the expression Stockholm Syndrome, but I actually don't know what it means. Maybe for my benefit and maybe anyone else that might be watching. What is that? How's that defined?
You know what cognitive dissonance is? Okay, let me refresh that.
No, well, you know what? I've heard the term again, but not super familiar with
I think
really what it is.
Good, because if we have like a viewer, it would be good for them to know what the hell we are talking about. So cognitive dissonance is simply inability to see things that don't match your worldview. So
Gotcha.
It's thought or said that when the Indians, the Native Americans or Indians or whatever, the Aborigines of Americas, were attacked by the Spanish, by their gigantic ships, they didn't see the ships until they walked on their shores. Like, you have a ship the size of a football stadium and they don't see it. That's cognitive dissonance, because it's not in their worldview. They have never seen this exist. Therefore, when something like that comes to the reality and they're like, I didn't know that existed, because it wasn't part of their reality.
Yeah.
And my teacher and friend Colin says that that's one of our biggest problems on this planet. That is our cognitive dissonance, right? And then Stockholm syndrome is that I capture you, you become my slave. And I have tortured you and done all kinds of nasty things to you for 20 years. And little by little, you start loving me. That's Stockholm syndrome.
That's almost similar to a kidnapped person falling in love with their captor, too.
That's what that is. That's the definition of Stockholm syndrome. Kidnapped, tortured, tormented, hostage, whatever you want to call it, after a prolonged period, falls in love with their captor. And, gotcha. they would do anything for that captor. So now we're dealing with a population that is cognitively dissonant and has Stockholm syndrome. So if there's this disgusting meme on Facebook, and you see these normies standing, say, oh my God, what beautiful rain. I love this rain. And it shows you the other picture is some rich guy peeing. Right? That's,
I assume, from a higher elevation.
Whatever. You figure out the engineering of it. But the thing is that's so whatever happens, how absurd. Like, let's go back, because I'm an analogy guy and you see analogies and stories. But let's say you are a box mover and you're doing your little busy work, and you see a little worker says, I don't want to move boxes anymore. I'm tired of this, right? And they get shot. Like they get pop, pop, they're dead. And then everybody else looks at it and say, what just happened? Oh, nothing. It's just this person needs to get a vacation, and they are gonna get a lot of money and a lot of food, and we are just gonna move them to another facility because they are so good. They do. Oh, that's great. And then like 10 days later, everybody's talking about it. So what happened? Oh, they moved to a better facility. Yeah, that was, that's how stories are created in this reality. Everything is like, oh, no, that wasn't the death. That wasn't something bad. That was, and you can take that to everything, right? Like you can talk about the number of coincidences that have happened with people who came up with, let's say, exotic forces of energy on this reality. Right? Like I have created a device that, you don't have to pay for electricity ever again. Oops. What happened to that guy? I don't know. He had a fight with his wife, and then he decided to jump out of the window from the 20th floor. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I can relate to that. A couple of things come to mind, actually. The one that's most present in my mind at this moment is the Dental Association found in North America. How can I say this briefly? There was this mentality that there's this authority body that says the best way to take care of your teeth is to do this, this, and this. And you've heard it for many, many years over and over again. And I've been following something very close to that and have had little to no success. And recently I've decided to step away from that and start looking at someone who's maybe worked in the industry, but knows better, or at least has a passion for genuinely helping people. And so she's talking about different techniques that do work from her own experience, because she was a dentist and she tried things, and she was a researcher and she tried things, and she learned certain things that she's doing. So I shared this most recently, without getting into a huge long story, with my dental hygienist just this past week. And she said something interesting. She said, every time someone brings something new to the forefront in the general public, somehow it gets shut down, or that person disappears, or it goes away. I found that a very interesting comment to come from someone who works as a dental hygienist. I was quite surprised. So, quite surprised that she said it, not surprised at what she said. A little bit of a difference there. But yeah, definitely, it brings up a lot of questions of why are we always believing, or many of us listening to or believing a higher authority without really challenging what they're saying and saying, is that really the truth? Is that really accurate? Does that really help me? So that's what comes to mind when you shared that for me.
I just want to say that my physicist friend Nassim Haramein told me something years ago, and he said, Hamid, do you know when science changes? I'm like, no. When the old scientists die. This is not a joke. This is a reality. So I told you probably, I listened to this Dr. Jack Cruz have a 4-hour conversation, which is insane. And he basically put it very clearly where the big C came from. You use the word big C. I'm just going to stay with the big C. Hopefully people can figure out the
Big C,
thing
good.
that kills so
Yep.
many people all the time. He said before the polio thing, the big C was incredibly rare. When they forced the polio thing on people, 300 million cases of big C were created. Look, the other thing about this game is that the controllers, which is the 0.1% of the population, they don't need all of us, like their little boxes and whatever, their work. They just don't need all of us. Does it make sense?
Oh yeah, I've heard a certain term that starts with the word useless, and then something else that
yes, yeah. So hopefully we
exactly.
set it in 2 different places, that they won't kill us for that. Yeah, I mean that's the way they look at us, right? And so the problem is that you're a perfectly kind Canadian person. That's not the problem. The problem is humans cannot imagine the level of darkness other, shall we say, entities, because I can't even tell them they're humans, would subject others to. The idea is beyond humanity. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'd like you to talk about that, because I think you can speak to that, maybe not in a graphic or very, gratuitous parts, but I think you can speak about that, because I believe in your kindness and goodness and niceness, and I think somebody like you to speak about the unspeakable things that can be done, and your reaction to that would be very interesting to me. Or your, not necessarily reaction, but your view or your even thought about something like that.
I hearken back to actually when I was a teenager, because there's a bit of a story here to tell, but I think it's a story that kind of defined me a little bit in this lifetime as far as who I am and some of the things that I hold dear. Although in the last 5 to 10 years, it's certainly been challenged with things that happened in 2020 and since. But I grew up in a household that was open to alternative medicine, shall we say. Everything from chiropractic to reflexology and that kind of thing. And we're talking kind of mid to late 70s, in the 1900 century, well, the 20th century. And so even those modalities were considered almost taboo. Like you didn't talk about them in any open aired capacity, right? It was almost seen as though if you were going to see a chiropractor regularly, that maybe somehow because you were going off mainstream, that there was something not right about your interest in those things. So to me, I always found that interesting, and immediately it created a sense of that there's this other way of doing things that for some reason wasn't right or considered right by the general public or in society in general. I'm glad to see that changed somewhat for those particular modalities that I used in this example. But then new things have been discovered, new things have been tried, new like Chinese medicine has become more prominent in this part of the world, and yet still considered perhaps taboo by many. And so there was always this there's mainstream and then there's the other, and there was always sort of this thing that the other was not right, if you will. I don't know how else to put that except just to put it that way. And it became very apparent in 2020 when you were more inclined to going the other way than you would be going the mainstream way. So in that sense, it was a bit of a shocking time for me, for example, because I got the impression, and again, I was looking at alternative media as well as mainstream media somewhat, and getting the feeling that I was on the wrong side just because all the authority figures were saying, don't go there, you shouldn't believe that, or that kind of thing. I quietly held my own ground because that's what I felt in my heart. So I followed my heart. And since then, I've actually softened somewhat because I don't see things necessarily as much in those polarities anymore of other and mainstream. I think that there's more gray area in between now, and I kind of live there more. For example, I mentioned the dental work thing for me is like I just had a tooth pulled 6 weeks ago. And because I kept trying to do alternative things and none of them were working. And so this person that I discovered was definitely using more mainstream kind of thinking, but not in the way that we were being instructed. So not going into a long story with that, but basically I'm more of a space now where I'm being more neutral as far as not labeling things right and wrong, and just observing, just observing and saying what feels right to me, what comes from each of these things. I don't know what else to say as far as this subject, but that's just where I've gone in my own evolution, is that maybe there isn't to me it doesn't feel like there has to be all on one side or all on the other, that there are alternatives to the alternatives, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I see that, as you said, you've become more moderate and softened. But I guess what I was trying to speak about is that, and the reason I brought you in here with this topic was because I believe in your kind heart. Okay. I believe if you see somebody in need, or somebody hurting, or somebody needing support, or whatever, you would do something. It would help them. You would, show your sympathy. You would have compassion, something, right? Even more than something. Mm-hmm. So, and I am telling you, you are not alone. A great, great majority of humans are like you.
Mm-hmm.
And if those people were to see that there is a small population that would have them wiped out, without blinking an eye. That's a gigantic step to take mentally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Here's a human being who sees an old lady needing to carry her groceries upstairs, right? Let's say Jimmy, this boy, would help the old lady, right?
Yep.
If Jimmy, our young Jimmy, were to learn that in some corporate office in New York City, somebody just signs a paper and 10,000 people are evicted from their house because some big money goes to some rich guy who becomes richer. For Jimmy to understand that level of darkness is not going to be so easy. And I'm just giving you a very watered down type of darkness. I just said eviction. I didn't say elimination. I mean,
yep.
Because when you're living on this planet and you're on a bus or in the street, you're dealing with human beings like you. They're not psychopaths. So when psychopath does something, for a normal human being, that is very hard to comprehend. Now, we talk about serial killers, and we talk about, oh, that guy, whatever, the Manson, right? Charles Manson killed like 20 people. And if somebody were to tell you that, hold my beer, somebody else invaded 20 million people, that, to get that understood by a normal kind human being is not very easy. And that's a big part of the cognitive dissonance. I'm not even going to go into Stockholm afflicted. I'm just going to say cognitive dissonance. You're living in a predictable, so-called loving, kind world where people care, where people don't hurt each other. So there is psychopathic action by a group of people that doesn't match your reality. And if it doesn't match your reality, how can you even sense it?
Is that a question to ponder for the audience and myself, or is that
I
something
am
you're asking
asking
directly?
you are a kind man. How can you sense it? And what would you do to somebody who comes and tells you that it is like that?
Well, I think if someone told me it is like that, and if I was really caught up in my own world of cognitive dissonance, then I wouldn't believe him. I would just, I wouldn't believe him.
But do you think you would just stop at not believing him? Or would you go further? And I'm not
If,
necessarily talking about you, because you're a very kind, generous, compassionate, conscious guy.
yeah.
But I'm saying, a normal person, you just drop something onto them which threatens their world and their little held cognitive dissonance. What do you think they want to do to you for doing that, or to the person who does that to them?
Well, my instinct would be that they would want to at very least argue that such a thing actually exists, and would deny and argue and verbally at least fight against that and say that's not true.
And I
Prove it
like
to
that.
me.
I like the fact that you say at least, because that
Yeah.
is the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the individual, depends on the temperament somewhat, depends on where their own boundaries are,
Right.
like when someone's really being challenged, how far
Yes.
will they go?
Right.
All those kinds of things.
Yes.
Um, like for me, it's a little different, not just because of some of the things that you shared about my personality, but also that there is a held belief that I hold that, and many people do subscribe to this, and many don't believe in this at all, and that's fine. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong or anything like that, but basically, what I get a sense of is, to me, life is kind of like some even call it a simulation. I definitely say it's a learning place. It's a place for us to learn things about who we ultimately are, and that the reality that we experience within our own lives, because our realities would be different than even our neighbor's reality, is different. So in a sense, it like it is a real stretch beyond my reality, my living reality, my everyday reality. But at the same time, I'm going, okay, I believe I have enough presence of mind to go, okay, I don't subscribe to that. It doesn't feel right for me in my life, in my body, in my experience. But I also am, how can I put this? If that's what needs to happen in this world, in this life, I'm still open to having that be what it needs to be, if that makes any sense.
The key word is openness. Okay. And the fact is, there's a concerted effort in the matrix to have people not open. Okay. Because openness is something that is incredibly precious and difficult to achieve. I wanted to say, and I'm going to go back to openness because it's really important. I wanted to say, in our little factory, warehouse of the busy world, an echo chamber is very, very much the reality, right? That a certain thought process is considered the right type of thought process, right? I just said, let's say, we are moving boxes, and somebody says, I don't want to move the boxes, and somebody shot them. Bam, bam, they're killed, right? It's like, what the hell did you do? Nothing. They're completely okay, and they're gonna be taken to a better world or whatever, right? And everybody believes that. And they continue living their life. Now, there is a crazy person who comes with a big billboard that shows you that person is dead and the pictures of it, and they are affecting the cognitive dissonance of everybody else, and that person is punished, the person with the sign. What do you think people do when that happens?
Well, again, some will go back into their cognitive dissonance, but others will be, I think, shaken out a little bit and start questioning and
I
saying,
guess you are much
"What just happened
more,
to that guy?"
you are much more, I don't know, you humanity much more, what's the word for it?
Optimistic,
Or
optimistic.
you give humanity much more credit than I do, right? But
Okay, that sounds.
having said that, the way this reality has been operated, I guess that would be the one word to use, or manipulated, you were never supposed to see the guy with a big sign that says, this is all BS. You were never supposed to see that. And guess what? Probably for thousands of years, nobody has seen that guy because the system was incredibly good at predicting that guy and taking him before even he could affect one person. But now it's a different story. Now it's closer to what you're saying. Did you want to say something?
More people in the world, for one, and maybe that's another reason why there seems to be more interest in the discussions of population control. And I'll use a very generic, flat term for that, but I think you know what I mean. Yeah, it's like, and more people are waking up, and more people are taking the red pill.
So the issue with cognitive dissonance, and the reason maybe you and I would have less of a cognitive dissonance, I have a really the opposite of cognitive dissonance. I have cognitive sonance or whatever, because as I said, if a three-headed goat appeared next to you, was
Yodeling.
yodeling and breakdancing, I'm like, oh, that's cool. You could have put a hat on or something. Like, that's my level of absolute, complete, not believing any of this reality. Were you trying to become the goat? Is that what you did there?
No, I was looking over my left shoulder to see if the goat was there
Yeah,
yet.
I thought the goat was you gonna start doing the goat. I'm like, that would be fun. But
My yodeling's not so good.
I know. We can co-yodel. The thing is that key of openness, I think it's good for us, especially you, to speak about your openness. Because I would dare say your openness has, you have become more open over the years. Would you agree?
Yes.
I want you to explain or describe a little bit of about your journey that afforded you to become more open. What was it that you needed to do? What was it that, if openness was the prize that you have now, how did you get to this prize?
Well, for me, I feel like it was an evolution. But you know that COVID 18 plus one was definitely a catalyst, I think, to take me to another level. And I've said this in other talks, Zoom talks that I've had with you. I think we're included in that, but we had some other gentlemen as well who were joining us. And I was saying that in many ways, that whole experience, as unpleasant as it was at times, was also a great catalyst. And so for me, that was a period of time, like I when things shut down planetary wide, like I decided, well, I guess I have to do something. I can't run my business right now because You know, they won't operate a sports business. So I guess I have to fill my time with something. So I started watching a lot more YouTube videos. And the funny thing is I I didn't know what I wanted to watch immediately, so I just asked myself the question, what do I want to watch? And you know, the first calling I got was for anything related to UFOs and aliens. And that surprised me a little bit, but in my being, if you will, it felt like the right thing to do. I felt excited, you know, like I like that expression that Chandler Bashar uses about following your higher excitement. And so that felt like the right thing to do for me at that time. So I started watching videos from channelers and specifically, you know, Alex Collier, for example, talking about aliens and other entities. Um, Another gentleman whose name I can't remember right now, but it works for the government, or had worked for the government and with the government. Um, has done some movies. He did some movies right around that time that he just released as we were hitting the height of COVID. And I started watching those kinds of things. And then that led me into other types of videos because there was overlap. And then before I knew it, I was watching what some people may consider conspiracy theories around politics. And so I was watching that and stretching that out, rather than going into the details any further than that, was I got to hear and see so many different points of view and realities from just the alternative side of what people would call alternative media, that I said to myself, well, even within the alternative media, there are conflicting things that are significantly different. And I said, I don't know which one is the truth and which one is reality. And I have no way of really knowing apart from just following my gut to what feels right. But at the same time, I know that I've been wrong many times before, even when I follow certain instincts. It usually leads me to something good, however. So that's the caveat I'll put on that. But to me, what I drew from all of those different things, and I watched a ton of videos, and only in the last year or so have I really tapered off the watching of videos, even though I still do, is that because there's so many viewpoints and so many ways of looking at things, and so many people have different experiences, the other thing that started to come through for me was spirituality. And in my spirituality, I started to see that part of me grow more and more, and the interest in things that may be labeled as conspiracy thinking or conspiracy theories by some, became less and less of interest to me in my life. And what the spirituality brought for me was a more tolerant, broader view, a more acceptance of what is, and that everything that I see in my space is a part of my reality. Now I'm even that is now getting challenged. I watched a video just this week from a channel on YouTube called the Y Files, and they even say that now that there's the new age religion that's coming forward to take over all the other religions, and they'll bring things that will challenge history and the chronology of history, and will debunk a lot of things. And but it came across as making the new age religion also a tool of, shall we say, the controller beings that are over and above everything else. So, you know, it gets me to a point where I start saying, I really don't know what to follow or believe if I'm only going from my thoughts, my mind.